Quit faking it. My mom snapped as I struggled to breathe. My sister said I was just trying to avoid cleaning up. But when the EMT checked my pulse, she shouted for a stretcher, and the room erupted in panic. I, 19M, never thought the people who were supposed to protect me would be the ones to nearly kill me. But here I am, a year later, still processing what happened that day and everything that came after. Growing up, I was the invisible child. My sister was the golden one, the achiever, the one who could do no wrong. When she got into a prestigious college, there were parties and celebrations. When I got a full-ride scholarship to a state school, my parents said it was nice, but reminded me that my sister had gotten into an Ivy League. When she came home for breaks, everything revolved around her schedule, her needs, her stories. I learned early on that my role was to fade into the background and not cause problems. The summer after my freshman year of college, I came home for break. My sister was also back, having just finished her junior year. The house immediately shifted into its familiar pattern, orbiting around her. I got assigned all the household chores while she was somehow always too busy with her internship applications or networking calls. My mom justified it by saying I needed to contribute since I was home all day, conveniently ignoring that I was also working part-time at a local warehouse. The incident happened on a Saturday in July. We were having a family barbecue, which really meant I spent the entire morning cleaning the house while my sister lounged by the pool and my parents prepared for guests. My chest had been feeling tight for a couple of days, and I had this persistent cough that would not go away. I figured it was just a summer cold or allergies, so I popped some over-the-counter medicine and kept working. By early afternoon, guests started arriving. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when the tightness in my chest suddenly intensified. My breathing became labored, each inhale feeling like I was trying to suck air through a straw. Sweat broke out across my forehead, even though the air conditioning was running. I gripped the edge of the sink, trying to steady myself, but my vision started tunneling. I managed to stumble into the living room where my family was entertaining guests. I tried to tell my mom something was wrong, that I could not breathe properly, but she barely glanced at me. She told me to stop being dramatic and to get back in the kitchen because the dishes were not going to wash themselves. Her friends laughed, and someone made a joke about lazy teenagers. My sister rolled her eyes and announced loudly that I was clearly just trying to get out of doing work, that I always pulled stunts like this when there were chores to be done. I tried to explain that this was different, that something was genuinely wrong, but my words came out in gasps. My mom's expression hardened. She snapped at me to quit faking it and threatened that if I did not stop this nonsense immediately, I would be grounded for the rest of the summer. The room had gone quiet, all eyes on me, and I could feel the judgment radiating from everyone. My dad just shook his head in disappointment and turned away. My legs gave out. I collapsed onto the floor, my vision darkening at the edges, my chest feeling like it was being crushed by an invisible weight. I could hear my mom's angry voice telling me to get up and stop embarrassing the family, my sister saying I was taking this act too far. But I physically could not move. My body would not respond to commands anymore. Someone must have called emergency services because the next thing I knew, paramedics were there. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, knelt beside me and immediately began checking my vitals. I saw her face change, saw the professional calm replaced by urgent concern. She shouted for a stretcher, her voice cutting through the confused murmur of party guests. Suddenly the room erupted in panic. My mom started asking what was happening, her voice high and scared, completely different from the cold anger of minutes before. I remember being lifted, remember the ceiling of my house passing by in a blur, remember the bright afternoon sun as they rushed me to the ambulance. My mom was crying, asking if I was going to be okay, and through my hazy consciousness, I felt a strange detachment from it all. The EMT in the ambulance worked quickly, placing an oxygen mask over my face and hooking me up to monitors. She kept talking to me, telling me to stay with her, but I was so tired. At the hospital, they discovered I had developed severe pneumonia that had progressed to sepsis. My oxygen saturation was dangerously low, and my blood pressure had dropped to critical levels. The doctor said if I had waited even 30 minutes longer, I might not have made it. They put me in the ICU, where I spent the next 4 days fighting for my life while antibiotics and fluids dripped into my veins. My parents came to visit, of course. My mom cried and held my hand, apologizing over and over, saying she had no idea it was that serious. My dad looked shaken, kept saying he should have known something was really wrong. My sister came once, stood awkwardly at the foot of my bed, and mumbled something about being sorry before leaving after 10 minutes. But as I lay there, too weak to even sit up, something inside me had fundamentally changed. I realized that if I had died on that living room floor, their last words to me would have been accusations and dismissals. They had chosen their image, their convenience, their pride over my literal survival. And the scariest part was not that they had made a mistake in the heat of the moment. It was that this was just the culmination of 19 years of the same pattern. My needs had never mattered. My pain had never been real to them. I had always been an afterthought, an inconvenience, a supporting character in their story. When I was discharged, the doctor had a serious conversation with my parents about my recovery. I needed rest, needed to avoid stress, needed to be monitored for several weeks. My mom assured him she would take excellent care of me. That family came first. The irony was not lost on me. The first few days back home, they treated me like I was made of glass. My mom brought me meals in bed, fluffed my pillows, asked constantly if I needed anything. My dad took time off work to be around. My sister offered to do chores without being asked, but I could see the cracks already forming. My mom would sigh heavily when I needed help getting to the bathroom. My dad started making comments about how I was milking the recovery. My sister complained that she was doing all the housework now. By the second week, things had mostly returned to normal. They had processed their guilt, reassured themselves that I was fine now, and the family dynamics slid back into their comfortable grooves. My mom started asking me to help with small tasks. My sister stopped doing my chores. My dad suggested I was recovered enough to go back to my warehouse job. The difference was that now they occasionally referenced the incident as proof of how much they cared, how scared they had been, how they had been there for me. But I had not forgotten. And I had not forgiven. I spent the rest of that summer planning. I was still weak, still recovering, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. I researched scholarships, housing options, financial aid. I had that full-ride scholarship, but it only covered tuition and some fees. I needed to figure out how to support myself completely because I was done relying on them for anything. I picked up extra shifts at the warehouse as soon as I was cleared to work, saving every penny. I stopped participating in family dinners, claiming fatigue. I stopped engaging in conversations beyond basic pleasantries. I became a ghost in my own home. My parents noticed, but interpreted it as lingering effects from being sick. My mom would comment that I seemed withdrawn and suggest I should try to be more social. My sister said I was being moody and needed to get over it. They did not understand that I was not withdrawn. I was preparing. August came, and it was time to return to school. I packed my things methodically, taking everything that mattered to me. My parents assumed I would be back for fall break in October, for Thanksgiving, for winter holidays. I let them assume. The morning I left, my mom hugged me and told me to call often. My dad slipped me some cash and said to work hard. My sister was still asleep. I loaded my car, took one last look at the house where I had grown up, and drove away. I did not go back for fall break. When my mom called asking about my plans, I told her I had too much schoolwork. She sounded disappointed but understanding. Thanksgiving approached, and she called again, excited about the family gathering they were planning. I told her I had picked up extra shifts at my new campus job and could not afford to miss them. She tried to convince me that family was more important than money, that they would help me out if I was struggling financially. The irony was suffocating. I held firm, and eventually, she accepted it. Winter break was harder to avoid. My mom called repeatedly, my dad sent texts. Even my sister reached out saying it would not be the same without me. But I had prepared for this. I told them I had been selected for a special winter research program at school, a prestigious opportunity one could not pass up. It was a lie, but they bought it. My mom was actually proud, bragging to relatives about my academic achievement. I spent that winter break in my shared apartment with 2 roommates who had also stayed on campus, working at a restaurant and enjoying the peace. The real confrontation came at the end of my sophomore year. I had maintained minimal contact throughout the year, always with convenient excuses. But my mom was insistent that I come home for the summer. She said they missed me, that I was being unreasonable, that family needed to stick together. My dad called and used his stern voice, saying I was being disrespectful and that they expected me home. I agreed to meet them, but not at home. I suggested a restaurant halfway between my school and their town. They thought it was a strange request, but agreed, probably thinking I just wanted to have a nice family dinner. Update 1. We met on a Saturday afternoon at a chain restaurant off the highway. My parents and sister were already seated when I arrived. My mom immediately tried to hug me, commenting on how thin I looked, asking if I was eating properly. My dad shook my hand firmly, giving me that look that said we would be having a serious conversation about my behavior. My sister barely looked up from her phone. Once we ordered, my mom started talking about their plans for my summer at home. She had already signed me up to help with a church fundraiser. My dad had lined up a better-paying job for me at his friend's company, and my sister needed help moving into her new apartment before she started her graduate program. They had mapped out my entire summer without consulting me once. It was so perfectly characteristic of them that I almost smiled. I waited until they had finished outlining their plans. Then I told them I would not be coming home this summer, or any holiday. In fact, I was not planning to come home again at all. The silence that followed was deafening. My mom laughed nervously, saying I was joking. My dad's expression darkened, and he asked what kind of stunt I was pulling now. My sister finally looked up from her phone, confused. I told them I was not pulling a stunt. I was simply done. Done being the invisible child. Done being the scapegoat. Done being dismissed and neglected. I recounted that day in July, how they had accused me of faking a medical emergency, how I had nearly died on their living room floor while they called me dramatic. I reminded them that their concern only appeared when paramedics confirmed I was actually dying, that their care only lasted as long as their guilt, that within weeks they had returned to treating me exactly the same way they always had. My mom started crying, saying she had apologized, that she had not known. I cut her off. I told her that the problem was not just that day. That day was simply the moment I realized the pattern would never change. I had spent 19 years watching my sister get everything while I got scraps. 19 years being told my achievements did not matter, my feelings were not real, my presence was an inconvenience. The medical emergency just made it impossible to ignore anymore. My dad got angry. He said I was being ungrateful, that they had provided for me, paid for my needs, given me a home. I asked him if he remembered what he said when I got that full-ride scholarship. He claimed he had been proud. I told him his exact words were that it was nice, but not as impressive as where my sister had gotten in. He looked uncomfortable, said I was taking things out of context. My sister finally spoke up, defensive. She said I was acting like a victim, that everyone struggles with sibling dynamics, that I needed to grow up and stop holding grudges. I looked at her, this person I had shared a home with for 18 years who had never once stood up for me, who had joined in the dismissal and mockery, who had called me an attention seeker while I was literally dying. I told her she was right that I needed to grow up. That was exactly what I was doing. Growing up meant recognizing toxic relationships and removing myself from them. My mom begged me to reconsider, saying families work through problems together, that we could go to therapy, that she would do anything to fix this. I told her I had already considered everything carefully for almost a year. This was not a rash decision made in anger. It was a calculated choice made for my own survival and well-being. I did not need their money anymore. I did not need their approval, and I certainly did not need their half-hearted attempts at affection that only appeared when their guilt flared up. My dad asked if I was seriously going to throw away my family over one incident. I corrected him. Not one incident. One lifetime. That incident just opened my eyes. I stood up to leave, and my mom grabbed my arm, desperate. She asked what they were supposed to tell people, how they were supposed to explain my absence at family events. And there it was. Not concern for me, not genuine desire to repair our relationship, but worry about their image, about what relatives and friends would think. I gently removed her hand and told her she could tell people whatever she wanted. She was good at creating narratives that suited her. As I walked away, my sister called after me, saying I would regret this, that I would come crawling back when I needed something. I did not turn around. I got in my car and drove back to school, feeling lighter than I had in years. The calls and messages came flooding in over the next weeks. My mom left voicemails crying, begging me to talk to her. My dad sent texts ranging from angry demands to awkward attempts at reconciliation. My sister tried guilt trips, telling me I was destroying our mother, that I was being selfish and cruel. Extended family members I barely knew started reaching out, having clearly heard some version of events, urging me to forgive and forget. I blocked most of them. The ones I did respond to got a simple message. I was focusing on my well-being and education, and I needed space. I did not elaborate. I did not justify. I did not argue. Update 2. 6 months later, I learned through a mutual acquaintance that my parents had been telling people I had some sort of breakdown, that the medical incident had affected me psychologically, and that I was going through a difficult phase, but they were confident I would come around. They positioned themselves as long-suffering parents dealing with a troubled child. It was impressive, really, how they had managed to maintain their victim narrative. My sister got married that following spring. I was not invited, which was fine. But apparently, she told everyone I had been invited and chose not to come out of spite. More narrative control. More image management. I heard through that same acquaintance that my mom cried at the wedding about her absent son, and several relatives sent me messages about how heartbroken she was. What none of them knew was that I was thriving. I graduated college with honors, got accepted into a graduate program on the other side of the country, and built a life surrounded by people who actually saw me, who valued me, who did not treat my existence as an inconvenience. I found friends who became the family I chose. I started therapy to work through the years of emotional neglect and learned that what I had experienced had a name: scapegoat child syndrome. My therapist helped me understand that I was not crazy or overly sensitive, that my feelings were valid, that choosing to protect myself was not selfish or cruel, that I did not owe anyone access to my life, regardless of DNA. 3 years after that restaurant meeting, my mom found out she was sick. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but serious enough that she needed surgery and a recovery period. My dad reached out, the first contact in over a year, telling me that this was the time to put aside our differences, that family rallied in times of need, that my mom was asking for me. I felt nothing. No guilt, no obligation, no pull to return. I sent a polite message wishing her well with her surgery and treatment, and then I went about my life. My dad called me heartless. My sister sent a vicious message saying I was proving what a terrible person I had always been. Several relatives I had not talked to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my moral character. But I slept fine that night, and every night after. People often ask if I ever feel guilty, if I ever regret cutting them off so completely. The honest answer is no. Sometimes I feel sad about what I never had, about the family I wish I could have grown up with, about the support and love that should have been unconditional but never was. But I do not regret protecting myself. I do not regret choosing my own well-being over their comfort. Because here is what I learned lying in that ICU bed, hooked up to machines, fighting an infection that nearly killed me. Life is too short and too precious to spend it begging for crumbs of affection from people who have shown you repeatedly that you do not matter to them. The people who were supposed to protect me had accused me of faking while I was dying. That was not a forgivable mistake. It was a revelation. My revenge was not dramatic or explosive. I did not ruin their reputation or seek to hurt them the way they hurt me. My revenge was simply living well without them. It was building a life they were not part of, achieving success they could not take credit for, finding happiness they could not claim to have contributed to. It was refusing to play my assigned role in their family dynamics anymore. They wanted me to be the invisible child, the one who faded into the background and absorbed their neglect quietly. Instead, I became invisible to them entirely. And that, I think, bothers them more than anything I could have said or done. Last month, I defended my thesis. My chosen family was there, cheering and celebrating. I thought briefly about the fact that my parents did not even know I was getting my doctorate, that this milestone would pass completely unknown to them. And I felt at peace with that. Sometimes the best revenge is not making them pay. Sometimes the best revenge is refusing to keep paying the price for their failures. Sometimes the best revenge is just walking away and never looking back. I am thriving now, truly thriving, in ways I never could have if I had stayed in that toxic dynamic. And if that makes me heartless in their eyes, I can live with that. Because their eyes were always looking somewhere else anyway. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot to us.